What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today we give you the final words, the final things you need to know to be ready for Week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. The Jets are 0-1 after their loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Bills, after a huge comeback victory against the Baltimore Ravens, are 1-0. The Buffalo Bills are actually the only team in the AFC East who got a win last week, okay? So if the Jets can pull off the win against Buffalo and they are both 1-1, the Jets would actually be in first place, all right? Thank you to everybody who has been down with the Jets Latest channel. If you want to become a Jets Latest insider, you can click on that link in the description. You can get access to exclusive content. You can get all sorts of other perks as I not only hook you up with the Jets, but fantasy football, sports betting, helping you win your league and win that cash. Let's start off with the injury report as we go into Week 2 against Buffalo. So Keenan Nguanu, the kickoff return. And by the way, if he was out there, maybe Xavier Gipson doesn't fumble that kickoff return, absolutely changing the game against Pittsburgh. He's missed time this week with a hamstring. Josh Reynolds popped up on the injury report later in the week with a hamstring. That bears watching. Mason Taylor, been nursing that ankle. He's been struggling with this ankle the entire time. I would say Jeremy Ruckert actually played pretty well in Week 1 in his stead. Jay Tufele, remember, he's the guy who popped off in that first preseason game against the Packers. He has been sick all week, so we will see. These guys are listed as questionable. The Josh Reynolds one is interesting because he is that de facto number 2 wide receiver, and he popped up as a DNP on Thursday. Usually you want to see that trending in the right direction, going like Mason Taylor, for example, from a DNP to a limited practice. It was going the wrong way for Josh Reynolds. And of course, Keeney is big because the other thing is the Jets did, in fact, release Xavier Gipson earlier in the week. To me, this is Aaron Glenn sending a message. This is Aaron Glenn showing accountability, right? Mistakes will not be tolerated. I think that is very important, okay? So those are the guys to watch for the Jets to see if they are up and active, and Xavier Gipson is no longer on the roster after his fumble, which I believe changed the game against Pittsburgh. On the Buffalo side, they've got a lot of starters that are also banged up as well. Starting running back, James Cook with a hammy, Shaq Thompson with a hammy, Greg Rousseau, a pretty good edge rusher with a knee, Tre'Davious White with a groin, Ed Oliver with an ankle, and others missed time. To me, the important part here is you look at that front for Buffalo, and there are guys out, right? Ed Oliver is big stopping the run for them. Rousseau is one of their biggest pass rushers, and Shaq Thompson is a run-stopping linebacker who could really impact them. They're probably going to go, but that does leave a little bit to be desired, especially in that front for Buffalo, especially as we talked about earlier in the week on Jets Latest. That Buffalo front surrendered a ton of yards to the Baltimore Ravens, and it doesn't get any easier with the Jets coming in with Breece Hall, who had a great Week 1. He is in the top 3 in the NFL in rushing. And Aaron Glenn, listen, Aaron Glenn is hyping up his guy. Remember all that time throughout the summer and training camp being like, no, we're not trading Breece Hall, saying like, we like all our backs. Well, it was Breece Hall. And look at what Aaron Glenn had to say. He goes, we talked about it all through training camp on how he is going to have a good season for us. He's a tough runner. He has really good speed. On a couple of those runs, he should have been stopped for negative yards, but he made some things happen on his own. The way he played really speaks for itself. And listen, like I said, Breece Hall is 3rd in the NFL with 107 rushing yards in Week 1. He had 4 explosive runs of 10 or more yards. That was tied for 2nd in the NFL. He also had 38 receiving yards. Remember, we have also been talking a lot about Breece Hall out of the backfield. His 38 receiving yards was also top 5 among running backs, okay? His 19 yards reception led running backs in Week 1. So much so that Breece Hall was out there on his social media. He put this up. You see it in the bottom. It says, I ain't forget what y'all said in the offseason either, okay? Breece Hall with a chip on his shoulder is very, very interesting. And I think, judging by what Buffalo surrendered to the Ravens in Week 1, I think Breece Hall and Braylon Allen and Justin Fields are going to be able to run the ball again when it comes to Sunday against the Buffalo Bills. And quite frankly, I've said it all week, they're going to have to, okay? I want them to run the ball because you also want to keep Josh Allen off the field because I believe our liability is in our pass defense, right? So we want to win that time of possession. That's something we've been talking about here on Jets Latest. Hopefully, we punch Buffalo in the mouth. We stay on schedule like we did in week one, the best in anybody in the NFL. Keep Josh Allen on the sidelines, and hopefully guys like Brandon Stevens can have a better week one, right? I also think Adams had a bad week one. The question is, can we limit Josh Allen in the passing game? Can we limit Keon Coleman? Can we limit Khalil Shakir? Can we limit Dalton Kincaid? Because if not, I'm telling you, the drumbeat is going to get louder in the media, on social media, and right here on Jets Latest about guys like Azaria Thomas. Maybe for Brandon Stevens, about guys like Malachi Moore, another rookie, maybe in for Adams. So we'll see. But all those things will be a little bit different if we can control the trenches and use our run game to great effect like we did in week one. And I say control the trenches, right? Because it's not only on the offensive side of the ball where we were moving people, where we were protecting Justin Fields. I talked about how Armand Membu had literally the best PFF grade of any rookie. He was light years ahead of all the other rookie offensive linemen. It's also on the defensive side of the ball where we're going to have to stop the run. And I got to tell you something, going towards the end of training camp, the acquisition of Harrison Phillips, we thought was going to be big, right? And Aaron Glenn was talking about how this guy embodies everything we do. He talked about it again this week, saying how he was in a turnaround situation in Buffalo, in a turnaround situation in Minnesota, and really contributed to that locker room. Another one of the character guys that Aaron Glenn likes. And let me tell you something. I saw Harrison Phillips in front of the mic talking about his week one effort. And let me say, inject this into my veins? Absolutely, yes. I am with Aaron Glenn. Harrison Phillips seems to be a perfect locker room guy and the ability to kind of be a good teammate, and he's going to help us even more stop the run. Listen to this quote from Harrison Phillips after week one. He says, I hope that was my worst game of the year. I only had 2 padded practices with this organization. I was in another system for 4 years that was a completely different style. As I watched the film, I got frustrated with myself seeing some of those old habits. You still play football well, but that's not what this defense calls for. My hope is that each week goes by, I'm able to perform better and better. I was dialed in on the playbook side of things, and I'm excited to see how our rotation works off each other. Like on one of Will's sacks, I was able to get in Aaron's face, make him pull the ball down so Will could get home. On one of Quinnen's hits on the quarterback, he was able to wrap me. So it may not show up in the stat sheet, but I'm able to make players around me better, and that's something I pride myself in. I love this quote from Harrison Phillips, okay? He's talking about a lot of professional stuff. He's talking about helping, making his teammates better. He's talking about taking the responsibility from getting better and better. You see the character, you see the attitude that Aaron Glenn talked about. You see the excitement for the other teammates. And quite frankly, the Jets stopped the run pretty good, even with Harrison Phillips having only a couple of padded practices, right? The Jets only gave up 53 yards on the ground. They only gave up 2.6 yards a carry. That was 4th fewest and 6th fewest in the NFL against Pittsburgh. They were one of only 6 teams to not allow an explosive run. Remember, I could talk about that a lot. The explosive runs are runs of 10 or more yards, okay? They were sure tacklers. This is something Aaron Glenn was working on in the summertime, right? The avoided tackle rate against the Jets was only 5%. That was 3rd best in the NFL. There was only 1.4 yards after contact. That too was top 5 in the NFL. But I love the attitude Harrison Phillips is bringing to this, right? He's saying, listen, I'm able to play football, but that's not what I need to do for this team. This defense calls for something else, and I'm going to get better and better, and I like making my teammates better. Took onus, took accountability, right? Even though he was part of a good run-stopping effort, it really looks like Harrison Phillips is everything Aaron Glenn said he was going to be, and I like the character in this building in Harrison Phillips. So there you have it. It's another edition of Jets Latest. We talked about the injury report. Watch Josh Reynolds. I think that's interesting. And watch what we do in the kick return game because Gibson is gone. Keeney is still down. So we'll see about that. And then, listen, we're going to need to be able to run the ball. And we feel confident about that. I feel confident about stopping the run. I feel confident about the offense. I love the way Justin Fields played. The key is going to be Can we improve our pass defense with the league MVP, Josh Allen, who threw for the most yards in the NFL in week 1? Can we do something to stop him? Where is Sauce going to be? Is Sauce going to be on Keon Coleman? Is Sauce going to be on Khalil Shakir? Whoever he's on, what does that mean for the other side? The side that Brandon Stevens is watching, the over the top. Watch Dalton Kincaid as the tight end as well. Can we make strides stopping the pass game with a tall task for the league MVP, Josh Allen? That is what to watch for as we hopefully continue to control the clock, control the line of scrimmage, and see if Breece Hall can have another big time effort as we try to get to 1-1 with a key divisional win against one of the AFC favorites in the Buffalo Bills. So let's see what you guys had to say out there. Tony Sturgis says, hopefully our offense keeps clicking, maybe tighten up our defense. I agree with you, Tony, specifically the pass defense. Hey, shout out to Old Dave. By the way, Old Dave, yo, Jets latest insider. Click on the link. What's good? Exclusive content, badges so everybody knows that you've been a day one represent kind of guy. He says, this offense is the kind you can take to a championship. If Fields can be the franchise quarterback, then the draft is an entirely different effort, and this team can fill holes quickly. I like the way he's thinking about it. Giving up seconds and thirds for guys like Aaron Rodgers, guys like Hassan Reddick, guys like Devontae Adams, etc. Those are team killers, and I hope Moji values draft picks more than Joe Douglas did. I like what he's talking about, because think about it. Look at how we filled holes with Membu, with Mason Taylor. We'll see about Moore and Azariah Thomas, Arian Smith, right? If we can continue to build and still be smart and get starters in the draft, imagine, and make smart trades like Harrison Phillips, imagine more and more years of this kind of smart organizational movement, right? Remember, we are at the beginning. I told you, Jets fans, be patient. Fernando Duval 4711 says, competitive team, chance for the playoffs. I agree. I said this was going to be a competitive team. Aaron Glenn talking about how we can be proud of this team. Let's keep it going. Listen, and I want to tell everybody, I've been saying preaching patience the entire time. I think we're at the Renaissance. I think we're going to look better. And we did. We need to keep it going. But I will say this. We lost to Pittsburgh. Buffalo is a very tough opponent. At Tampa in week 3, a very tough opponent, right? Then we also have across the pond against the Denver Broncos, a very tough opponent early in this season. Listen, I think the Dolphins are unraveling. I think we can get that one on the road on Monday Night Football. We got a team like Dallas. Like, we may be 2-4 after the first 6 weeks of the season. So I appreciate all the optimism. I appreciate in the comments that people are still like liking what they're seeing. Stick with this team, please. If we continue to like what we see, even like we may lose to the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills may go to the Super Bowl, for goodness sakes, right? Tampa Bay is a 2-time back-to-back division champion. We go to their place next week, right? We could be 0-3 and still feel decent about the way we look. So stick with us and stick with us here all season long on Jets Latest. And if you want to hear more from me, the spitting statistician Dane Martinez, remember, I am the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on SiriusXM, Channel 87. We get you ready to win your leagues, win that cash. I'm talking waiver wire tools. I'm talking rankings. I'm talking Stats Hub. We've got a great wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, help you make some sit-start decisions. And you can always hit me up on social media at Spittin' Speeds. Engage with me in the comments. You know what I say. I appreciate everybody who has contributed to the success and the growth of this Jets Latest channel. Watch these videos, like these videos, subscribe to the channel, and tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. The next time we are here, we will be talking about what took place in week 2 against the Buffalo Bills. Hopefully we continue to look good and maybe get even our first W of the season. And if we do, it would be a big one against the favorite in the division. And if we get a win, we will be tied for first place with the tiebreaker against the Buffalo Bills. So let's see what happens. We'll be back next week to discuss it. But for now, we out of here. Have a great weekend, everybody. Peace.